Every empire swears its money is safe. Every government insists its promises will last forever. And every time, history proves them wrong. From Rome to France, from the Confederacy to modern Lebanon, people have woken up to find their savings evaporated, their salaries meaningless, and their futures stolen by systems they thought were solid. Collapse isn't a rare exception, it's an unchanging rule. The real question isn't whether financial systems will fail, it's how you protect yourself when they do. The illusion of permanence is the most dangerous financial mistake people make. We look at our money in the bank, our national currencies, and accept them as solid ground. But money is not solid ground, it is trust, and trust can vanish overnight. This is why history is so brutal and yet so useful. Every collapse leaves behind lessons, patterns, and clues about what truly protects wealth and what vanishes. If you pay attention, you'll see that the survivors of these disasters weren't the ones who trusted the most, but the ones who doubted first. Take the Byzantine Empire. It is often remembered as the eastern part of Rome that managed to survive for 1,000 years after the Western Empire fell. At the heart of its economy was the gold solidus coin that merchants across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia accepted without question. For centuries, it was the most reliable currency in the medieval world. But here's the interesting part. One would think they had learned from the disaster Rome experienced by debasing the silver denarius. But no, centuries later, the Byzantines repeated the same mistake with the gold coin. They reduced the purity of the coins, adding cheaper metals. At first, no one noticed. Then, trust was shaken. The coin that was the foundation of Mediterranean trade turned into a worthless piece of metal. Debasement destroyed the coin's reputation and the empire's economic stability. So what survived? Not paper promises or government decrees. The merchants who had quietly accumulated real gold or land beyond the empire's reach managed to preserve their wealth. This is the first timeless lesson. Governments can never resist the temptation to debase their currency. When they do, real value flees to assets they cannot counterfeit. However, not every collapse stems from rulers debasing coinage. Sometimes, shocks from completely unexpected sources can overturn systems. In the mid-14th century, Europe was rocked by its most devastating pandemic, the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, nearly half the population died. But the economic consequences of the plague were complex. When half the workforce disappeared, the labor of the remaining workers became very valuable. Survivors could demand higher wages. Land and houses that were once expensive could be bought very cheaply. For those with cash or valuable goods, this became an opportunity. This situation repeated during the COVID-19 pandemic. Supply chains broke down, governments printed trillions. While those with cash and assets bought stocks and property, those living paycheck to paycheck struggled. The historical parallel is clear. Pandemics redistribute wealth. Crises reward those with reserves and punish those without them. Renaissance Florence reveals another truth. Institutions that seem too big to fail can collapse in an instant. In the 1340s, the powerful banking families of Florence, Europe's financial center, had lent huge sums to King Edward III of England. When the king refused to repay his debts, banks like Bardi and Peruzzi went bankrupt. Depositors' money vanished. Ordinary citizens learned the hard way that size is no guarantee. This lesson was repeated in the 2008 collapse of Lehman Brothers and in 2019 when Lebanese banks froze accounts. Survival depends on understanding that an institution's promises are only as good as its ability to keep them. During the American Civil War, both the North and the South printed fiat money to finance the war. The graybacks printed by the South became so abundant that inflation reached unbelievable levels. People had to carry sacks of money to buy bread.
By the end of the war, the Confederate currency was completely worthless. What mattered in this collapse was not paper money, but real assets like land, food, and gold. America's own history is proof that even a national currency can collapse, and protection is only possible through tangible values. In France in the 1790s, the assignats printed by the revolutionaries shared a similar fate. These notes, supposedly backed by confiscated church lands, were printed uncontrollably and rapidly lost value. Farmers refused to sell goods for paper money. In the end, the assignats became trash. Here, too, the winners were those who possessed things the state couldn't print: food, gold, and property. The 1997 Asian financial crisis is a striking example from the modern era. The crisis, which began with the devaluation of the Thai baht, spread across the region. Countries and companies that had borrowed in foreign currencies faced bankruptcy. People's savings were wiped out. Unemployment skyrocketed. The lesson to be understood here was borrowing in another currency leaves you vulnerable when the storm hits. All these historical examples show us the same truth. Paper money collapses. Debt leads to ruin. The survivors are not those who trust the system the most, but those who recognize its fragility early. Collapse is not just a threat of the past. Between 2019 and 2021, banks in Lebanon closed their doors. People couldn't access their savings. The Lebanese lira lost 90% of its value. A lifetime of savings turned into pocket money. The ones who fared best were those with assets abroad, or owners of gold or property. In 2008, while Americans lost their homes, the banks that caused the crisis were bailed out. In 2020, the printing of trillions of dollars inflated asset prices while wages stagnated. The 2023 regional banking crises in the U.S. were another reminder of how fragile trust is. So how do you protect yourself when collapse happens? History shows there is no single answer. In Byzantium, gold and land worked. After the Black Death, cash allowed people to seize opportunities. In Florence, not trusting big banks saved people. In the Confederacy, durable goods and food were valuable. In Lebanon, getting out of the banking system saved lives. The common theme is this: survival depends on not trusting paper promises, but on trusting things that will retain their real value when collapse comes. Collapse is also an opportunity. For the unprepared, it is ruin. For the prepared, it is a moment of wealth transfer. After the Black Death, peasants became landowners. After 2008, those with cash bought houses cheaply. But wealth is not just about what you own, but also about what you can do. Even when money loses its meaning, production never loses value. The baker who can make bread, the repairman who can fix tools, the farmer who can work his field, they survive every crisis. The greatest protection is real assets, real skills, and the awareness that the system is an illusion. Every crisis is a transfer of wealth from the many who trusted to the few who prepared. History constantly repeats this pattern. The real question is, when everything falls apart, will you be among the many holding promises or among the few holding something real? History doesn't repeat exactly, but it crushes those who fail to learn from it every time.